Hello everyone, I'm Forum BX257, your friendly neighborhood 1980s G.I. Joe reviewer, and today I'm going to be taking apart and putting back together a 1986 Cobra Terror Drome playset, with special emphasis on this, the Firebat jet launch silo. As you can see, my Terror Drome has all the tiny little parts still attached, and most of those tiny little parts are all around the top ring. But I'm not going to start tearing this thing down from the top ring. I'm actually going to start from the bottom, because that means I'll be able to disconnect the top ring from the base, as those were two separate pieces. Just going to start with these fold down doors. There are 6 of these altogether, and they're hinged with the C-clips which just point completely vertically. So once you get the door out of the way from the bottom lip of the top ring, you can just pull these out like that, and that's pretty easy. All that's left is the 2 swing out doors, which are a little bit difficult because they can be very fragile. They're held in by these really strange, almost like pressure fit C-clip pegs, one on the top, one on the bottom. It's all very strange, and they're very, very prone to cracking. You can see the C-clip there. And of course, the one at the top there. So in order to prevent this from putting too much pressure on it while trying to pop it out, what I'm going to do is sort of pull up on the top ring here, so that the peg has a lot more space in order to come out, so it doesn't squeeze that sort of strange little hinge that they've made there. So by pulling it out, pulling it up, and then pulling the door out and forward from the top here, then I can just pull this thing out. As you can see, the actual peg that goes into the hole in the base isn't very long, so there isn't really much to actually pull out and manipulate here. The only attachments inside that you should probably get out, of course, are just the jail walls and these fueling stations. The fueling stations are, of course, fairly easy just to pop out. They slide out forward anyway. As for the jail, they should be sort of held in by little clips that are on the sides of these walls. So there's one little clip there. You just have to pull that thing forward. And one clip on the other side. Removing the walls is a lot easier than putting them back in, let me tell you. But they do just slide straight out, just like so. And now there's nothing holding the top upper ring to the bottom base, and this can be lifted completely off. Most of these are, of course, tab and slotted in, and they're not really meant to be removed, but things like this cannon are actually very easy to remove. You can just lift it up straight up, and the peg here is just sort of friction fit into that hole. The seats are kind of hinged on both sides, kind of like a rocking chair, and those hinges are very, very easy to break off. So the easiest thing to do is actually just to squeeze the chair by where the hinge is in on one side, and just sort of slide it out from these hinge points. Now, if you want to remove the cannon base, you actually have to remove the computers first, these gray blocks. I mean, I suppose you don't have to. You could just sort of force this thing out and forward, but it's a lot safer, I would say, to access the back of the base through the actual ring wall, through the hole that's made by removing the computer. And to do that, the computer is actually tabbed with two little tabs right here and two on the bottom, which I'll show you a bit later. But you actually have to remove it from the top first, because that's a bit easier to do. And this one is actually kind of loose here, so you can actually kind of lift it. But normally you would have to sort of pry your way into here with either your fingernails or like maybe I don't know, like a screwdriver or something like that, just to sort of pry it up and off. And now you can see through the hole made by the removal of the computer, you can see two long blue tabs which start from this portion of the blue base. So you're just going to have to want to get your finger in there, or maybe a screwdriver, and just gently push it down. And once the blue tabs are forward and I've cleared the white ring, now you can pull this thing up, and you can see that these things do have little slide tabs which go into the holes here. Removing these RAM parts is exactly the same way as you would remove the cannon bases. They have the same type of slots, as well as pressure fit tabs, which are much easier to pull out by getting rid of the computer, which is right behind it. Again, taking this thing out, it's a little bit easier if you try to pull up on this thing, just to relieve the tension on the tabs that are on the top of this computer. However, you'll still need to sort of wedge something in there, your fingernails, maybe a small screwdriver in there, just to sort of help it up and off of these pegs here. And now, without that computer in the way, you can clearly see the blue pegs that are almost right in the middle here being wedged up against the bottom portion of this bar on the top of the base's top ring. So you just need to push that in, down and underneath. And here we have a fully naked upper Cobra Terror Drome ring. Now, please forgive me if I made the removal of the RAM parts look very easy. It really wasn't, because the tabs actually holding the top portions of the RAM parts in are more like little hooks, which really grab the undersides of these walls here, more so than the cannon bases, which actually have a lot of playroom here. And now for the part that most of you have probably been waiting for, the removal of the silo from the main base itself. Now, the silo's mechanisms are actually in between the silo itself and the black portion of the main base, making it very hard to actually fix it without taking this whole thing out, which unfortunately is a little bit hard to do on certain versions of the Cobra Terror Drome, but I'll get to that in just a moment. The first thing you have to do in any case is to remove the lever grip part. As you can see, the red grip part actually has a little hole, a square hole, in which you could actually just stick a little screwdriver in there. The black portion, which actually goes up and into the silo itself, actually has a little key tab there, which you have to sort of push in order to slide this whole thing out. I'll just do that right now. Interestingly enough, it's only on the left side on my version. But as you can see, if you flip this around, the hole actually goes all the way through. So it's entirely possible that some versions of the Cobra Terror Drome actually have that key tab on both sides and not just the left-hand side. So you will have to sort of push in one side, then sort of push in the other side if you have that version. And now we can just flip this over and take a look at the bottom. And you have to release these tabs. There's 4 of them corresponding to these little white portions here, but it's actually the black tabs from the base that you have to sort of pull backwards just to relieve them, the tabs from the actual white plastic silo which is in the middle. However, there's a little bit more to it than that because, again, certain versions of the Cobra Terror Drome are different from others. Some actually have the silo glued in place. Now, if you pull all the tabs away and this silo still isn't budging out of the black base, it's entirely possible that yours is still glued and the glue is still holding. So what I would suggest is actually taking a small flathead screwdriver and actually wedging in between where the silo ends and where this black portion begins. Just around it, like that. Just kind of scoring it a little bit. Just so that you're sort of cracking the glue, but not putting too much stress on the plastic itself. And again, I'm just going to use that screwdriver just to sort of wedge in between where the black plastic tabs are. And just push the white portions of the silo tabs out through. And just continue it on for the rest of these like this. And now you're going to want to pull the lever down, which opens the bay doors, which is a little bit unwieldy, but you'll have to do that because in the down position there's enough room for the lever, which is still stuck to the inside silo, to go through this hole here. And now you can just pull the whole thing out and angle it so that the lever goes through the hole. And again, just looking at the base, you can actually see mine still actually has some glue residue there. So that's actually where it would have been glued from the factory. It doesn't seem to be glued all the way around the ring, just in one small portion there. But that portion is enough for this thing, for the silo, to actually stick into the base and be very, very difficult to be removed. I called moving the lever up and down just for maintenance a bit unwieldy because it opens the doors. But to be quite honest, you don't have to have the doors on here. And I found one of the very easy ways to actually take the doors off is, well, you can see that they're kind of hinged on 2 sides here. And while it would seem like just squeezing these things together, just like the chairs on the upper ring, would actually pop them out, I actually find it actually easier to actually put pressure in the middle of the door from behind and then pop them out that way. And now you can see just how the mechanism is supposed to be when it's in working order, with the launch pad all the way at the bottom and the lever is all the way at the top. Of course, this portion here is what's attached to the launch platform. So when this thing is in its lower portion, you can see this portion moves up, and the launch platform is in its highest position, which of course pops the doors open. As you can see, this thing is being lifted by this ball chain and is attached right here on the launch platform. But conversely, it's also attached on the inside of where the lever is. And here's how the chain is hooked up to the back of the lever from the other side, from the bottom here. It's a little bit easier to see. And as you can see, it's just like a little C-clip, so that when you're putting the chain back on, or putting it on for the first time, you just sort of line it up and then pressure fit it by pushing it into the recesses of the C-clip by pushing it, the whole chain like forward like that. When assembling or disassembling the chain, which is about, I'd say about 17.5 inches long from end to end, but if you're assembling it and reassembling it, I would actually suggest actually putting the lever sort of midway so that there's a bit of slack here. And you'd want the end clip here, where you actually connect the 2 ends together, to be on the inside and close to the top here, just so it's easy to access, and in case you need to remove some of the ball chains in order to tighten it up. Just one last look at how this is supposed to be properly attached. And you do have to keep in mind that the chain is supposed to be firmly attached to the C-clips on both the launch pad and on the underside of the lever. They're not supposed to, when you raise and lower the lever, it's not supposed to go through those like a throughway. It's actually supposed to be stuck onto whatever ball you actually have it connected onto. Well, this is all the time I have for now. I hope this has been helpful, and thanks for watching. See you next time.